Welcome to the Table Rush Talk Show, where we dive deep into entrepreneurship, marketing, and personal growth. I'm your host, Misha Zvagensov. In this episode, I sit down with Peter Murphy Lewis, head of growth at WebStreet and CEO of Strategic Pete. Peter is a master at transforming content into paid speaking gigs, convention invites, and brand takeovers. He shares his journey to becoming a fractional chief marketing officer and offers strategies to tap into overlooked assets, repackage content, and turn your work into real revenue. Whether you're looking to scale your marketing efforts or repurpose existing content for greater impact, this conversation is packed with actionable insights. Stay tuned to learn how to leverage your content for maximum value. Peter, welcome to the show.
I'm excited to be here, Misha. Thanks.
Awesome. And we had a great pre-conversation, I don't know, a week or two or three ago. And man, you're up to so much cool stuff. But one of the things as we were brainstorming ideas is you said, hey, you know what? This was just off the cuff. You said, hey, you know what? My podcast, meaning your podcast, you had so much success with it, and you were literally able to turn it into 15 state conventions fully paid. It got you paid as a keynote speaker, and then again a lot of podcast takeover top opportunities. I'm not sure what I meant when I wrote that down, but those were some of the things you were excited to talk about. And I think maybe before we dive into that, why don't you just quick tell us what you do, what's your main thing, and let's dive into it.
Sounds great. Yeah, I am a chief marketing officer, but more specifically, I'm a fractional one, which means that I plug in to businesses where the CEO does not want to manage marketing or doesn't want to or doesn't know how to manage marketing, and they want to get a return on investment in that. So I work with 2 to 4 larger clients per year. Sometimes that's 5 hours a week, sometimes that's 20 hours a week, and sometimes I set up their team to exist when I disengage. So that's kind of my role.
Cool. Love that. And you've worked with some pretty big clients over the years, yes?
Yeah, I've worked with 3 banks, a few that were newly chartered. I've worked with venture-backed AI businesses, some private equity turnarounds in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's fun. My team gets from 10 to 20 people, depending on how many clients and what are the needs at Strategic Pete. We started that about 5 years ago, and it's ever changing atmosphere.
Cool. And so give us the journey. How does one become a fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer? How
Yeah, I I
yeah, go ahead.
think in my instance it was organic. So one of the big enterprise SaaS companies that I was leading the marketing team for about 3 years ago, the CEO was just really amazing. He said, Peter, like the more you're helping other people means you're going to bring that knowledge into our team. And he said, you're kicking butt on the KPIs. If you want to start taking Fridays off, you can. Well, I didn't really take Fridays off. I like to work. My wife works with me at our agency. And so I started to pick up clients, started doing pro bono work on Fridays for nonprofits, joined a couple boards. And then that kind of just built into this area where I like to problem solve specific issues around revenue for companies. And I figured out there was a title for it. I'm not a freelancer. I'm not a consultant, because I plug in, I have metrics. I go to leadership meetings, and that is how fractional CMO work was born at Strategic Pete.
Amazing. And anybody watching, listening, you can go to strategicpete.com, and see what Pete's talking about here, what I'm talking about. So you have things on there: cut costs by 50%, 3 times higher ROI, return on investment. You talked about KPIs, or key performance indicators. So tell me some of the things you're doing as a fractional CMO to help somebody cut costs, or riff on that for a minute.
Yeah, so if the leadership team or CEO or board knows clearly what are their goals around revenue, and marketing can help. I'll usually come in and I'll do an audit to determine if it's a fair goal, if it's a right direction, and if I think it's going to make a difference. If it answers yes to those, and then I ask, can I make that happen? That's where I come in. So the riff on it is, if you need to cut costs, if you need to improve workflows or automations, or you need to, go to market in Latin America, I speak Spanish. If you need to transition into institutional investors in the private equity space outside of retail, you need to open a new bank, and I feel like I can support her on that, and you understand what you need to do, but you might not necessarily know how to get there. That's usually where I plug in.
Cool. Can you give me specific examples? I guess actually a first question I would have would be, give me, well, you said you're going to ask somebody some questions. You're going to ask the leadership team some key questions. Where is this company revenue wise? Like this perfect company that you're walking into as a CMO to help somebody with their marketing. Like, give me a picture of that company. Where are they in their growth cycle? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, perfect. I'll start off usually with what are the pain points of the leadership team, and then start to grow into how that's translated into strategy and execution. Their pain points are usually they have hired, fired, or watched mid-level marketers come in and out of their company over the last 12 to 18 months. And they've either fired them because they've set up bad goals, they've either lost them because their goals were unrealistic, or the marketing manager wasn't great at strategy. They could do some execution, but who cares about great execution with bad strategy, right? You might be working on the wrong thing. So that's usually the pain point. They come in, they say, I need someone who can solve this ever revolving door of marketing team problems that I have, and I need to translate this into money, at 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, depending on what their problem is. Where that what that person looks like, it's usually a company that is doing, on the low end, around $2 million per year in revenue. Team size, that I mean, there's one person teams that I've worked with that are at that point, and then some of the larger teams that I've worked at that are over $15 million in revenue, right? Those are larger teams, 15 to 50 people, depending on how much is overseas and how much is sales and operations and so forth. To dive a little bit further into what they often struggle with in that business space, they often have so many marketing metrics that the CEO doesn't know what to do. Like, they're either doing too much and then they're not getting anything done. So like I kind of have a adage where I like to say, I like to do less. So let me start that again. I like to do more with less. So often, I will come in and I'll look at 25 metrics and I'm like, I have no idea what's done, but let's put an Eisenhower matrix of what's the most impact that we can get with the least amount of effort. And then let's shave off 70% of this work. And then let's figure out where our 80-20 is. So that's usually the first step that I do when I get involved after an audit.
Well, can you give me specific examples of, we shaved this, like that 80-20? Give me
Oh yeah.
some specific examples. Yeah.
I can give you an example right away around social media. So for one of the SaaS companies I was working with, I came in, it had, two mid-level marketers over the last year. They had handles on Twitter X. They were pushing things out on the company LinkedIn. They were pushing things out on PPC on LinkedIn. They were adding things to Instagram. They were thinking about testing TikTok. They were putting out videos on YouTube. I mean, from a social media point of view, they tried everything poorly. So I said, let's just look at your last 15 leads that have come in that have been clients. Let me get on the phone with them for 10 minutes. Tell them we're going to give them a gift card, Amazon gift card, whatever it is. We'll highlight them. We'll give them a backlink. If they're into marketing, we'll give them exposure, whatever, scratches their back. Let me talk to them. And I want to figure out, where they consuming their information. So I'll ask them, where's the number one place you go to when you're solving this pain point? Is it YouTube? Is it a podcast, right? Is it LinkedIn? Are you learning from your peers? Is it a convention? And I just go through that right process. And I did this with the SaaS company. And I determined that out of the 15 people that I spoke to, right, every single one of them said LinkedIn. But none of them had seen the LinkedIn content from this client because they were putting it on their company page and they weren't putting it out well, right? So from a LinkedIn point of view, I said, let's find someone on the leadership team or the sales team who has a personality, who understands how to save the point, and let's start having them publish everything on LinkedIn, one post per day, and then let's set up an automation where we find your ICP all across LinkedIn and start to connect with them, and then use the LinkedIn algorithm so those people see your content, and let them use that as your nurturing, and because email marketing sometimes doesn't work, right? If you're an executive, your inbox is overloaded, but your LinkedIn isn't. LinkedIn's putting at the top. They're smart. They're putting at the top what you want to consume. So I just told that client, I said, we are not doing anything on X. We're not doing anything on Facebook, Instagram. We'll do a little bit of maintenance on YouTube. Let me figure out what needs to be optimized. Well, YouTube was the place that they need to be, but they weren't doing good thumbnails and they weren't optimizing their titles, and they weren't using shorts. So, first step was LinkedIn person. Second was YouTube optimize, and then let's start over. And still to this day, working with the client, we're not doing any of the other socials.
Amazing. And do you bring in a team to help create this content, or are you more of a one-man show? I don't mean, I mean, I know you've got a company, a team behind you, but are you giving them the plan and then they're executing? Here's the assets you need to make a SaaS company. Here's all the things you need to do. Or are they turning that over to you and you're creating the assets, you're executing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my engagement with clients is usually one of three types. One is me giving them strategic direction with their current in-house team. Second is me doing direction and my team is executing a percentage of that. And then the last one is I'm doing strategic direction. My team is executing, but we are immediately setting up a system for me to disengage. Now, on all three tiers of that, specific to your question around creating content, I try to find somebody in the team that can be the face of that brand, because people fall in love with people, not with what I'm executing, not with what I'm talking about the brand. I'm not the expert. I'm not the subject matter expert. Rather, someone else is on that team. And if that person is not the CEO, I try to make sure that real estate of that person that we're building around is shared with the CEO, being part of that, so that employee doesn't have leverage over that company, right? So, like if you were the account manager at this SaaS company, Misha, like you might be the color personality. You're great at podcasts. You're a great speaker. You're gonna be a great keynote speaker. But I want to make sure that you're getting 30 to 50% of the real estate at the company, so you don't have too much weight. And I want to make sure that we're sharing that across the board, so that the brand is never completely dependent upon you.
I love that. And then it's almost plug and play. Then it's like if this person no longer is functionable or is going to be in that role, they don't have a leverage to hold you hostage, or if they voluntarily, maybe they're just tired of it, burned out, whatever, you can say, great, we still have this 50-60% of the face over here. Now let's find the next guy to put in to replace that 30 to 40% or whatever that is. Am I
Yeah.
saying that right?
Yeah, like I'll give you an instance. There, I was the face, or one of the important faces of a brand, and I was not the owner about 4 years ago. And the most important person in the leadership team was the CEO. While he wasn't the owner, he was recruited by the private equity to be the most important person and be there to the end. So while I might have been the person on the podcast and on the convention route, I always talked about him. And to be honest, I would say 50% of the things that I've learned from an HR point of view have been from him. So I make sure that I was always talking about him, made me less threatening to him. obviously a lot less threatening to the private equity company. And the problem that we were solving when I would go to these conventions was about staffing. So me talking about my amazing CEO who taught me so much about HR and culture was in line with the thing that I was teaching, and it made me a lot less threatening as a VP of marketing for this company.
That's cool. I love that. Thank you for that. And then, of course, my brain went to the content creation, but then there's converting. You've got the content creation piece. It's creating this traffic, this visibility, this engagement, and then you obviously are helping with the systems to convert. Yes?
Correct.
Yeah, cool.
So,
You want to dig into that for give me 3 minutes on that or
yeah.
because I think you said, "Hey, like you've got you I loved how you talked about the 3 tiers and the third tier being we're going to create this system for you and then step 3 is we hand it to you and you in effect I don't want to say wash your hands of it but you
Mhm.
they're now uh, fully functional on their own. Maybe that's a good way
Yeah,
to
so
say it.
I have two examples around kind of that. Um, and one is a little bit more hybrid and one is complete disengagement. So one client which is in the B2C travel industry about 2 years ago engaged me and said, "Hey, I need you to solve this problem with me. I have the revolving door of marketers. I don't know how to guide them. I either set up such high goals that they leave, or I have so many goals that I don't actually know what's working." And they said, "You're a little bit pricey what for where we are from a revenue point of view. Can you set up a system, train a person, and then disengage?" And that's what I did. So I hired a marketing manager. I set this person up for success, which is do more with less. So not very many goals, focus on the 80-20. And then I set up an internship system underneath that person where they would have inexpensive labor coming in of people who were trying to become marketers under that person. And we taught them SEO, we taught them copy, we taught them PPC, and we taught them social. And those people would grow into that. So their culture was being made, and that marketing manager is still there. And one out of 3 interns that were hired 2 years ago is still working. And now it's a 2-man team, and I disengaged. The second version of that is 5 years ago, I was in charge of the marketing team for a travel company, and they asked me to take it over, and I joined with one other woman on the team, and now that team has grown, and I disengaged. Now I stay on as a strategy, and I meet only with the COO and the CEO, but from they keep me there in case that marketing team ever disintegrates, or if they're going to have a new strategy they want me to bring in, so they keep their mid-level marketing at a fair salary. They don't have to pay a full-time chief marketing officer, and then they have me for once or twice a month to guide them.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Everybody, again, watching, listening, strategicpete.com, spell it out just like I said, and you can see Peter and follow along and see cool stories. And I just want to speak to quick. Also, I know we are looking at time constraints, so a couple things I want to make sure we talk about, and we'll get to it in a minute. But one is how you converted your podcast into speaking opportunities, paid speaking opportunities, and really were able to leverage that not only to get paid to speak, but to as a platform for what you're doing now almost, right?
Mhm.
And then the next thing that I want to make sure we quickly touch on is you reached out to me, and it wasn't you personally, it was an assistant reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I'd love to have Peter Murphy speak on your podcast. So I want to maybe you can, if we find a moment, you can walk us through that process because I think that would benefit my listeners who are wanting to get onto podcasts, and
Yeah.
so you have some great tips there. Um, Before we dive into all that, everybody watching, listening who's gone to strategicpete.com, they're going to see you've got a great sense of style, fun. You talk very tactically, very strategically, very like I get the impression, hey, you're going to be we can execute on what you're talking about, any of your customers, right? They're going to have that confidence, but at the same time you've got this great sense of style. So we go to strategicpete.com and you're clearly having some fun, and and I don't know if flamboyance is the right word. But then, I'm looking at you right now. Anybody listening, you've got these great pink sunglasses on. You've got this sweater that's amazing. Your pink power cables. Maybe talk to me about that. When you roll in, are you laying the foundation of like, hey, don't take this too seriously, or like you need to have a relaxed attitude, or am I making sense with my line of
Yeah,
questioning
I
here?
think so.
Yeah.
I'll start with what I think the number one priority is for any business in the service industry, in my industry, which is helping people make money. The very first thing is you have to offer value, right? So like I teach my son all the time, most important thing that he can learn from me is to be helpful to others. I said, if you can't get straight A's in math or reading or writing, but you tried your hardest and everybody at school thinks that you're helpful, that all your friends' parents want you to come over to the house because you're nice and you're helpful. All the teachers give you good reports to me that you try hard and you're helpful. That you're going to be an amazing entrepreneur. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to also be memorable. And the way you be memorable, other than having goofy pink glasses, is you talk about other people. You make other people feel good, right? So this isn't provocative. I've always dressed in pink. My favorite color is pink. My son calls me Papa Pink Pants because I have two pairs of pink sweatpants. But it is an extension of being memorable, right? Like you as a podcast host, you're memorable because of your good questions, your curiosity into me. I'll never, ever forget who Misha is, and your army, right? And that you're a chief influence officer, that you're being memorable and you're being helpful at the same time. So I think that our branding on Strategic Pete or even on my LinkedIn, Peter Murphy Lewis, is one, I want to be the most helpful person in the room when I go to a convention, when I'm helping a client. But I also want to be memorable, right? Like we're in a saturated space in the marketing space. There's a lot of there's a lot of crap out there. And if I can continue to be helpful and memorable and live off of my reputation, it'll make my job easier. And I try to do that when I help others, right? Like if somebody wants me to redesign their website and it's going to be another software SaaS website, I'm like I don't think that you get me. Did you see my homepage? My website is pink. Like my team, Misha, my team on my website last week on the homepage, it says, quote, I love helping other people make a lot of effing money. And they wrote out effing. And I said, hey guys, we are bidding on a $1 million grant project with a huge health company that's very conservative and religious. Can you slow down on the F bombs on the homepage? And they're like, okay, can we put a reminder on our project management tool in 2 weeks after we win or lose the grant that we can go back to F? And I said, yes. Okay.
Oh my God, Peter, that is amazing. And we had a super fun conversation. Uh, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks, month ago, whatever it was, sort of a pre-call where it's like, all right, let's see if Peter will be a good fit for the podcast. And I love the authenticity. So anybody watching, listening, if you don't have a chance to go to Strategic Pete while we're talking about this and see the pink and all that, and it's clear that it's authentic to you and who you are, which I love. Right? It's not like be memorable, but don't be authentic to who you are. You're clearly authentic to who you are, and I got that from our pre-conversation right away. And so you live in Wichita, Kansas. You live inside of a zoo. It's a private family zoo that was started in the 70s. Just talk about that. Like you said that to me on our pre-call, and I was like, wait, what? Like that's amazing. And I think it speaks to, boy, your creativity, your just that authenticness, and hey, I love pink, right? Like it all makes sense. So go ahead.
Yeah, so it is true. I do live inside of a zoo. There are zebras that are about 30 yards behind my office right here where I'm sitting. My office is at home. There are cheetahs that are about 60 yards in front of the camera that I'm looking at right now. I guess as a storyteller, right? Like you and I are both in marketing. The way that I connect the dots is my parents, or the way that I explain how I connect the dots. My parents ruined me to have a traditional life when they sent me to boarding school at the age of 14 in the state of Missouri. I went to a boarding high school with 160 kids, of which about 60 of those 160 were international students. So my best friends were from Egypt, Japan, Mexico, South America, Africa. And I got the bug at the age of 14 that I realized, uh, there is no such thing as normal. And my paradigm, my framework to approach life was rocked, right? Like I realized that there was so much to life other than the way that I saw the world. And this is not putting down on the middle of the US, because I don't think the coasts are any better than the middle of the West. I'm just saying everyone is stuck in their ways in our framework of how we see things from where we are raised. And that international changed the way that I live. So since then, I've always looked for people who live a little bit differently than I. So, my wife and I live in almost a tiny home. We don't have a guest bedroom. We have one bathroom. We have guests in our house all the time. We live in a camper part of the time. We live in South America about 3 to 6 months out of the year. We're a one-car family. Right? Like we kind of challenge the status quo about everything that we think is true. And that ends up being that we have some weird life decisions. Like we live inside of a zoo, right? Like we don't own a home. We don't, and we could own several homes. We don't live a home because we live inside of a zoo with an 8-year-old that allows us to enjoy this great life. And I feel like it's affects my creativity so that I have the brain width to help out other people. It translates into marketing and helping others. It's a long story about how I ended in the zoo. I'm sorry.
No, no, that's beautiful, and um, I love the perspective of a lot of us can get trapped in what we think we need to have to validate the work we do or our passions or things like that. And traditional things are own a house or have a bank account that looks like this or have this many subscribers or this many followers or I've got to be married or all these things or two kids, 2.5 kids. And I love the perspective of, hey, we're purposefully not going to own a house because that is going to remove brain what am I trying to say? Things that you need to focus on, right? Like we need to pay the bills, blah blah blah, or these things, and instead you're surrounded by animals and all this stuff, and you don't have to worry about home ownership, and so there's that space to create. I'm just rebarfing what you said in a different way. I'm just loving it. I love that perspective, is what I'm trying to say. So
Well,
thank you for that.
I feel blessed. We've created it together with my wife. We speak Spanish at home, and we're leaving in about 9 days to go to South America before Thanksgiving and before Christmas. And I have cool parents from Kansas who don't care I'm going to miss the holidays, and it's their fault. They sent me to boarding school.
This is so good. We could keep talking about all this stuff, but I want to get to a few things. I definitely want to get to how you leveraged your podcast into these speaking gigs. I also want to get into. It turns out I just looked up the email from Leslie Reitz. If I'm saying her last name, she actually cold pitched me via email to get you on the show. So I want to spend a few minutes on that in a minute. But before we get to that, we've been talking about customers that you serve that already have some fairly good momentum. They've got $2 to $10 million in revenue. They've failed perhaps trying to build marketing teams or tried strategies, and I think so many of my listeners want to get to that point.
Mm.
Perhaps we're solopreneurs or we've got a VA, or with what you've seen, what you've been through, maybe give me three key things to focus on from your perspective for a solopreneur to get to that $2 million point? Does that
Mm.
question make sense?
Yeah. Do you want me to start on the team side of things?
Love that. Why not?
So, you know, when I'm working with a CEO who knows that they need to scale their marketing team, I try to follow a systematic approach to it. My favorite system that I use is from the book EOS, like Entrepreneur Operations System. People call it Traction EOS system. I implement that loosely, right? I'm not a paid consultant to do that. I've never gone through their classes, but I've implemented it in my companies in South America. I've implemented my company here in the United States. I've co-implemented it with some of the leadership teams. And that is the way that I approach it. So when thinking of how to scale a team and following it that way, I'm a huge believer that almost everybody with ambition and that is good at listening can be a good marketer. So, like what on my side of things, generally I'm focusing on scaling a marketing team or a revenue team. And I just think it's not a skill that you need to be taught in school. It is an ambition that you have, that you want to learn the tactics, the skills, the strategies around marketing. And all you need to do is know how to listen, right? Like I do case studies and I do PPC and I do social media and I do video on YouTube and lead branding. And the main difference between me and somebody who might not be a great marketer is I just think that I listen. It's something about focus. Um, so back to your kind of question on how to scale a team. I like to scale from within, and that means you hire one person who's good at a systematic approach to scaling, to creating your team, and then you build from bottom up if you have the time. If you don't have the time, right, then you need to do a lot harder work at values and culture. And the EOS traction system will teach you on how to hire around values and run one-on-ones around values. I didn't answer your question on how that's related to revenue, but I think I would need a lot of questions. I would need a lot of follow-up questions to know what industry we're talking about to be able to help you to be able to answer around team plus revenue.
I think you did a fine job of answering the question, and leads me to a follow-up question. The good at listening. Speak to that. Why is that important? Some people who heard me ask that question are going to go, duh, but answer it anyway.
I think I'll answer from a philosophical point of view, and then I'll answer from a professional point of view. From a philosophical point of view, I always believe that there's two basic human needs, which is we want to feel connected and we want to be understood. As a teammate, as a dad, as a husband, as a son, um, if I can make the loved ones, the loved ones around me feel connected to me and feel understood by me, then I'm making life better for them and I'm loving them in a more empathetic, a more holistic manner. Now that translates over to work and it translates definitely into marketing. And the easiest way to turn those more abstract ideas of feeling understood and feeling connected into a verb, into an actionable item that you can do today, it's learn how to listen, right? Like go to YouTube and learn how to listen, right? Go listen to Tim Ferriss' podcast where he'll tell you over and over how to listen as a podcaster, as a podcast guest in this moment. Like I need to be hyper focused, less focused about my words because it's not going to come out perfect, right? Like you and I are improvising this. But what I do need to do my best is I need to pause and listen to each one of your words. This is your podcast. This is your audience. So my delivery might not be perfect, but the one thing that I can, if I want my delivery to always be better and better and better, it's listen, right? And it goes back to the foundation to feel connected to you. Am I listening to who your audience is? And am I making you feel understood? Otherwise, you're not going to recommend me to other podcasters in your world.
Love that. So we've got the philosophical side of things where we're covering the two basic human needs: to be connected, to be understood. also extrapolating that out or going a little extending the philosophical side of things, if we can reduce the ego and actually truly pay attention with curiosity to about what my question is to you, and you can hear that outside of, as much as possible, outside of your own constructs and preconceived notions of what you think I'm trying to get to or whatever, uh, serves all of us better, I think. Right, that
Yeah.
is in effect what you're saying. Awesome. And so then we've got the second is going to be, just I'm thinking of it as a marketer, if we're asking questions and listening, we can actually hear the pain points. We can tap into uh, the customer and their pain, and then how are they feeling? What
Mm.
are they thinking? What are they actually doing? And if I'm listening, I can tap into that. So then I can hear, acknowledge, market to that, but potentially even solve that problem, right? And then I can
Mhm.
talk. Yeah, go ahead. So I'm assuming that that's part two. You said there's kind of two prongs. There's the philosophical side of things, but then there's also
Well,
prong.
the professional side translates right into marketing, right? So, like if you're doing a case study, you need to do your prep work beforehand to know what makes that client that you're going to interview tick, right?
Yeah.
So, are they interested in being on the case study because you've helped them? Are they interested in being on the case study because you're going to make them look good? Because they like being on camera, because they like to talk. They want to share their own story. Like you need to figure out what makes them tick from from a client point of view. Like I always analyze people based around the five languages of love. So I try to determine out every single one of my clients, the leadership people that I will be interacting with, who I will be reporting to, what is the love language that they live their lives by, so that I can make them feel appreciated. If you haven't read that book, you should go read the book, especially if you're a marketer. If you're married or have kids, you're definitely going to go read it. If you've been divorced multiple times, you should have read it before you got divorced. Now's your last chance before you get divorced again. But it matters from a marketing point of view, right? Like, how do I make you feel when you're on my website? How do I make you feel when I send you an email? How do I make you feel when you see an ad? How do I make you feel when you touch my product? You open the box from Amazon or whatever I sent you, or the service that I give. How do I make you feel? There's multiple triggers, and that's close to five languages of love, and that's where marketing lines up with that philosophical of need to feel connected and understood. And then, like, let's just wrap it up. Listen, learn to listen.
Hey, it's a good life skill. Your kid, you will have a better family. Your kids will respond better. They'll be better kids.
Yeah.
You might survive the relationships ups and downs that you have.
Mm.
You won't have to be divorced again. Oh
Yeah.
my god, so good. All right, let's dive into it. You started a podcast in 2021, and I don't know, is it the LTC Heroes podcast? Is that the
Yeah.
podcast
Long
you
long
started?
term care heroes. Yep.
Okay, cool, cool. And so then you were able to leverage that into 15 state conventions that you spoke at, fully paid. You got paid as a keynote speaker. Uh, so, and then, talk to that first. Like, what was the strategy? How'd you leverage that? How did you repurpose and package to do that? Like, talk to me.
So
I want to
so
know. I've got a
so
podcast. I want to.
today Yeah, so today I think that I have the experience that I could strategize, turn this into a plan. But I'm not going to say that this was a plan when we started the podcast. I didn't know I was going to have this success. I just went back to the very first thing that I said, which is, how can I be the most helpful, most valuable person in the room, that I try to teach my son, and to also make sure I'm memorable. The way I try to be memorable is by being a great listener, and letting the person know that I appreciate them. So back then, when the podcast was built, it was built during COVID, and I was unable to go into nursing homes to meet and talk to my ideal customer persona for the company that I was working for, the private equity turnaround project that I had. And the way that I got around that during COVID was creating a podcast. And I could talk to CEOs who wanted coverage about themselves and their brand, and I could talk to them over Zoom without being any risk to the nursing home. And grew quickly into, making people feel great about themselves. And I, being a marketer, knew how to repurpose that material so that would help them with their census, with the bad reputation that people were getting, with all the political divides in the country. And that grew and grew and grew. And I think the first state that invited me was the state of Missouri Healthcare Association. They said, "Hey, Peter, we've seen you talking to CEOs all over about how they can control their narrative about healthcare and nursing homes, and you're interviewing the people with the best quality of care in the United States. Can you come speak on how you can build a brand and how you can control the narrative of your nursing home at our convention?" And I said, "Yeah, that's great. I would love to do it." And they said, "We'll pay for your hotel and your flight and everything like that." And I said, I got a crazy idea. Can I bring my podcast equipment and interview your members, your participants, your board members, the vendors?" And I said, "That's great." And that first experience ended up being a domino effect. And then I got invited to Florida, to Delaware, to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to all over the country. And then I just started getting closer and closer to our ICP and to leaders. We interviewed the CEO of the American Healthcare Association, one of the largest associations in the United States. And then I just finished filming a documentary that came out of that podcast. So I was paid by the state of Nebraska to do a documentary about their caregivers. And now I just sold a second one last week. So like what started off with me not knowing how to help, and I just found a microphone and made people be able to share their story, teach them how to repurpose that. Then that got me invited to do one talk. That one talk, I said, "Hey, can I offer more value than what you're proposing?" They said, "Yeah, you can." So I took their one offer and 2x'd it, right? Like I squared the value that was asked of me, and then it became a domino effect. And now it's going to be two documentaries, and I just got invited to 2 more conventions this year. So, and I think somebody could take this playbook and make it work again. It might not work in an industry where podcasts are heavy, like marketing, but if you're in something that is a little bit more in person, or something that is still less digitalized, I guarantee that you could make it work in 6 months. I bet, Misha, you and I could still make it work in marketing. You and I could do it in PPC. You and I could do it in YouTube. You and I could do it in almost any world with a little bit of thought, because you and I are marketers. But somebody who doesn't have experience could do this in the car industry or in the shipping industry or the fishing or the mining industry. This is just roll this red carpet out and you got it.
I love it. What a great vision. Uh, Give me 3 minutes on you taught them how to repurpose the content. And I liked how you spoke to, uh, you show them in effect how to create the narrative or control the narrative. But speak to that first on, you taught them how to repurpose that content.
Yeah, so those are tied together. So repurposing the content, what I often do for my clients or teach my clients or even at conventions is take one piece of an interview. So like this interview that I have with you, you will find pieces of it on my YouTube, on my LinkedIn. I'll write up 1 or 2 blog posts on my website in Strategic Pete about Misha and his army and what he's doing and his questions. And then this will be shared across my paid ads. It'll be across my organic. It'll be cut into shorts. You'll see me write up links on LinkedIn. The place where I do this the best, both for my type of B2B clients, but also myself, is on my LinkedIn. And you will see screenshots over and over and over of things that I'm doing and repurposing it, and it'll get interactions. Now, how do I do that to help control the narrative? This came from the LTC Heroes and being on stage. One of the things that I found specifically with leaders in long-term care, they are camera shy and they're media, I would say that they are video shy and sometimes technologically challenged, because they take care of people, right? Their love language is service. They are washing our parents and our grandparents and taking care of them from when they fall. And so they don't have to be naturally good at being on a podcast or on camera. So what I said is you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is bring up your favorite CNA, your certified nurse's aide, get out your cell phone, turn it in vertical mode, and walk them through and say, why do you love working in with America's seniors? And they're going to say, I love working with it because it makes me feel better. Da, da, da. To what is one of your favorite things in the day to do? And then they'll say this, and this. And they say, who would be an ideal person to work in long-term care? And then they say, this person, this person, this. They have this big heart. They're this. They like to work. They take care of. They ask questions. They're curious. And then they say, if you had to explain the values of this company, so let's say our company's mine, what are the values of Strategic Peak? Well, they would say curious, always questioning, fail forward, good sense of humor. Okay, great. And then you say, how does it make you feel to work here? And they say, like, this is one of the best decisions I've had in life. Turn it off. Do not edit that video. Take that video. Take those 4 questions I just gave you. Put that on your LinkedIn, put that on your Facebook, put some ads on it, and you just let a 20-year-old talk amazingly about their work environment. You're going to have both staffing. You talked about America's seniors. So if I'm going to send my parents, I want my parents to go work with that CNA. So I started to do that live on stage with the person's cell phone and taught them how to go home and do it. And they controlled their narrative. You don't need to make polished content to control the narrative. Have your happy staff speak for you.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. That is so, so good. Okay, we've got 13 minutes left. Anything else you want to say in regards to using your podcast to create what you've created?
I would say if you are interested in the podcast world, right? Like you're gonna hire Misha or somebody in the podcast world to help you build out your brand, because you know that building your brand around a person is better than building it from a company point of view. After you feel comfortable and you're able to explain who you are and what you do, make sure you don't fall into the same habit of saying the same thing over and over. And you need to go into your podcasts with a different intention for each podcast, right? And so I've done 50 podcast interviews in the last 6 months. There's probably 35 different main topics that I'm focusing on in those podcasts, so that then I can repurpose those onto different channels, into different solutions that I can offer for my clients. Now, you and I, Misha, don't do the exact same thing. You're helping people get visibility, and you're growing your army around that. I'm helping brands break into something. So there's carryover. But if I'm going with my private equity company, right, like I need to make sure that I'm positioning them as having the best portfolio managers at some point, or I'm helping them explain that they have the best returns. So I don't go in and just spout the same thing. I will go 80% deeper into each one of those topics. This is the only interview that I've done in depth with where I'm going through these topics with you, and it'll probably be another year before I do it, and it'll be a different 80%.
Love that. Beautiful. Great. Thank you. What a great way to wrap that up. Let's talk about, I got a cold pitch from, where'd it go? I just lost it. From your assistant, Leslie. Is she still working for you? Sorry to, I don't know if that's an appropriate question or
Yep.
not, but yeah, awesome. So she sent me a little pitch. Hey, and this was a great pitch. I loved it. Obviously, I responded to it. Hey, Misha, I'm Leslie reaching out for Peter Murphy-Lewis from Strategic Pete. Peter absolutely loved your episode on X. 2 sentences on what you do. We'd love to chat. Talk to me about your strategy there, and is it working for you getting on shows? Do you consistently have Leslie sending out pitches? How many pitches a month? Riff on that for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that there are three things that I do that make us successful for podcast pitching. One, I think any good podcast pitcher does, which is try to map out a subject that would be interesting to the audience that you're pitching. I don't think that's nuanced. I think that's what any good pitcher does. You know, the 2 other things that I would mention. One is I try to mention something personal, right? Like you and I spent 10 minutes talking about me living in a zoo. We talked about my philosophy around life and understanding connection. So I try to include in my pitch something that would make you want to have a beer with me or a coffee with me. Or if you ever come to Wichita, Kansas, you're going to reach out to me so you and I can go look at the zebras. So something memorable about me as a person, not as a professional. And then the third item that I think that is equally as important is, hold on 1 minute, I lost my train of thought. It was
Yeah.
pitching something. It is something personal. I lost it, Misha.
That's okay. Here, I'll read it again. And I was just thinking what I'll do for fun is I will put the pitch that Leslie sent to me in the show notes so people could
Oh,
see it. That might be, yeah,
I
go ahead.
remember. I
Okay,
think this is
good.
the most unique part, and I'm glad my brain fart went away. I released the brain fart, which is pitch to podcasts and audiences outside of your niche. Okay. I taught Leslie that I would much rather be on a podcast around people who love dogs than be on a podcast only around marketers. And I don't care of the 3,000 people that are going to listen to the podcast about dogs. There's going to be 5 of those dog owners who are CEOs who have a marketing problem. And as long as I'm passionate about dogs and passionate about philosophical things that remind them that they trust me as a human being, then they can check my credentials to see if I have my marketing chops. That is better than me competing in a very saturated market of everybody who's just regurgitating the exact same thing about marketing. I'm an ultra marathoner. Like, I've run ultra marathons. Get me on a podcast about ultra marathoning, less around business. Business people are also run marathons, and business people, even though they might listen to business podcasts, I'm competing against 100 other people per month.
I love that perspective. That is so, so powerful and so true and so good. I think as business owners, marketers, whatever, we're trying to put ourselves out there. We're trying to guest speak on podcasts. We can get very myopically in that box that you're talking about. And it's like, hey, think outside of that box. It's so powerful. Trust that if you speak, me, I'm all about I love sobriety and all things sobriety, right? So no doubt if I'm speaking on podcasts that are speaking to sobriety, recovery, the 12-step modalities, there's going to be somebody listening on there, 5 out of that 1,000 that's like, oh yeah, I want to be a better storyteller. I want to go on a podcast tour, for example, right? And I think so many of us lose track of that and actually don't trust that, because I speak to people all the time about just what you said. I'm telling people in my influence army, I'm telling them like, hey, like, think outside the box. You just need a tiny little just need the pieces of the Venn diagram to come together, right? And have that one little center section. But so thank you for that. I love that perspective. How many emails or pitches are you all sending a month or a week?
I would say Leslie's probably doing 20 pitches per month, and she's doing probably 3 or 4 follow-ups until the person either says yes or no. Of those 20, I would say 5 or 6 are accepting. One of them is trying to charge, $2,000, and they don't say that up front. And then we're like, okay, that's nice, but we'll see you at another point.
Amazing. And if it's all right for me to ask, where are you getting the emails? Where are you coming up with your email list?
We use a number of different tools. I think our favorite tool right now is Echo Jockey, and Press Ranger, where you because we're pitching also to news. So, like, we're getting quotes in Boston Globe. I was in the Boston Globe last week. We were in Business with Insider 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we're doing press for our clients, and we're doing podcasts for our clients.
Amazing. So Press Jockey and Echo Ranger were the
No,
two.
Echo Jockey and Press Ranger.
Oh, Echo Jockey and Press Ranger. Thank you. And Press and Press Ranger.
Mhm.
How many speaking gigs are you doing a month personally.
Yeah, so I think I misspoke. I think I miscalculated on the podcast. They might be doing more pitches because I'm doing about 2 to 3 podcasts per week. So they must be doing more pitches because that's 12 per month more or less. Speaking engagements. Right now, we just cranked up the convention engine, and we will. So I'm doing one in Naples, Florida. Doing another one in Vegas. Um, Doing one this Friday, which is more local. I bet in 2025, I will probably do 5 big conventions, by, like either it's over $1,000 a ticket or more than 1,000 people there. And then probably 3 or 4 smaller ones, which are local, 100 to 300 people, lower entry price.
Amazing. Same theory or pitch methodology to get
Same
on
pitch
stage.
methodology. The key to what I would add beyond the 3 podcast is you need to have an impressive one pager. You need to have a little bit of a reel so people know that they can trust you speaking. Ideally, if you don't have speaking experience on stage, you have some type of webinar where they can show that you know how to educate or that you're inspirational, right? So when I go to a stage with dog owners or ultra marathoners, I might not be talking about podcast pitching or how to turn your business into convention opportunities. So I might be talking about how I have a TV show, or I talk about how I use 5 love languages to connect with my team. Well, that's going to be every person who's at a dog convention still needs to learn how to connect with people. So I might be teaching them about 5 languages of love. I did a talk yesterday on a TED Talk by Tim Ferriss called Fear Setting. And I've taught many, many people in English and Spanish how to, instead of creating goals around what you want, determine what your fears are and what are the goals that are hidden underneath your fears that you're avoiding. So just like finding odd inspirational topics, that's kind of include that in your one pager.
Amazing. And then someone says yes, then you'll create that talk. So it sounds like you're creating a lot of content on the fly and you're comfortable doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or presentations on the fly. Awesome. So we are hitting the wall. I know you've got a big pitch you got to do, or an opportunity to serve, to close a deal, to serve a new customer. I'm going to give you 2 choices. You can either say the thing that you were hoping to say that you weren't going to get to say because we're about to hit stop, or talk about what's going on with this deal that you're hopefully closing the deal
My
on.
favorite is give value. So I've done 200 free consulting calls in the last year and a half on a program called Growth Mentor, growthmentor.com. And I do 1 or 2 calls per week on that. Reach out to me. I will give you a free coupon to join. You can book a call with me for free on there. And it's my favorite program. I'm a paying mentee on there. So I pay to get advice. And I'm also a consultant on there that I do for free. Reach out to me and I'll get you a coupon. You can send me a direct message on LinkedIn, Peter Murphy Lewis, and I'll get you that coupon.
Beautiful, Peter. Great. This has been amazing. So much fun. I'm going to hit stop. We can say a quick goodbye offline. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.